I'm Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I use for my research for this podcast. It is called the NLD Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get NVLD back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with NVLD on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the NVLD project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoy today's episodes. So something I wanted to alert you guys about that I'm going to be doing, there's two things actually that I wanted to bring your attention to that I thought you might want to know about. So I am putting together a website of some tech services that I can do for others that I will be releasing probably in a month or two. I'm not quite done with putting the website together, but basically it will have some services that I've done in the past for people and the testimonials that go with those, and then some that I haven't done but would like to do for others. Basically a portfolio showing you what I can do and what I have done. Because I'm trying to build a little bit of a side hustle with the tech industry because I'm not as good as I could be, but I'm getting better in it. And I would like to have some more income from that than just my full-time job. So that I can eventually move out and be on my own. And so that kind of goes with today's episode, which is on NLD, social justice, and independence, and how that is for NBLDers, and to try to relate it to neurotypicals as well. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention to you is on June 27th, there is a Facebook Live that the NBLD Project and other social ambassadors are going to be doing. I believe it's at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. East Coast time. And I don't know what the topic will be yet because that hasn't been decided, but I thought I'd let you know about that event and to try to promote it for the NBLD project. And for the ambassadors that are going to be part of it, I will be part of it. And there are some other ambassadors that will be part of it as well who have been on this podcast before. Ryan Lundy is one of them, and Oscar is another one. And I think I recognized somebody else's name on it. I'm looking for the email that I got. So yeah, actually, it's just Oscar and Ryan that I recognized. The other names on there I don't recognize, but I'm looking forward to doing that Facebook Live and seeing what topic we discuss, and hoping that it will be helpful for other neurodivergents, and that there will be some good content in there for neurotypicals as well. So that again is on June 27th at 3 p.m. Pacific time zone or 6 p.m. Eastern time zone. And I will provide the link for that event if you miss it. Thank you. Bye. All right, good afternoon. This is Living with Invisible Learning Challenge, and today's episode will be on NBLDers and social action. Are you neurodivergent and have a strong desire to care for social justice for people like you and neurotypicals? Do you care especially for those who have experienced more incidents than seem right for their age? For example, sexual abuse, abortion, comorbidities, or being excluded by society. And feel free to definitely associate yourself with this if you are neurotypical and you have these feelings. I don't want to exclude the neurotypicals here. Unfortunately, I have experienced some of these incidents: sexual abuse, comorbidities, and being excluded by society. I could have added abortion to the list if I had gotten pregnant as a result of my sexual abuse during my childhood. I feel so fortunate that didn't happen, especially when things happened like they have recently since the overturn of Roe v. Wade. I could explain to you how each of those incidents was for me to experience, but I already have done that in earlier episodes. I also think you can imagine what it might have been like with some of them, especially if you yourself have experienced similar situations or if you know someone who has. Instead, I'm going to share with you my feelings on some more public things that have happened recently. I couldn't believe it that the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade until I started to listen to the news more and saw other dominoes fall. Some of those dominoes were women's rights being taken away, with having the power to choose what they want to do with their bodies, how to protect their bodies from, and realizing that society wants to silence our voice. We can't let these restrictions on abortion, birth control, and women's rights to her body to continue. We must persist to make a stand against these changes and fight for our rights, beliefs, and values. When I heard about Eugene Carroll's situation and case against Trump, I was empathetic for her and how she must have felt during the whole incident. I was very happy when I heard that she won her case because I think it will pave the way for more survivors to come forward against Trump and other perpetrators like him. I would say another area that neurodivergents should fight for their rights is in school, because they deserve to have accommodations that help them excel in academic life. We should also fight for having help after academic life, because it's harder to get it than it is when you're in school. I don't want to minimize those of you who have had a hard time getting accommodations in school, but I think it's different in adult life because you don't have very many people to help you as you did before. In academic life, you have teachers, tutors, accommodations, teachers' assistants, and office hours. In adult life, you have yourself, family, and friends. Hopefully that is enough for you to get by and have the help you need to have an easier and less challenging life. And I don't want to minimize the support that family and friends can give you by saying that hopefully that's enough. What I'm trying to say by that is that how do I want to explain this? If you don't have a supportive family and circle of friends like I do, it might be more challenging for you to be able to overcome those challenges that NLD or neurodivergence will present to you. And I have only heard about that because of the many different neurodivergents I've interviewed, and all of them have had different levels of support from their family and friends with helping with it. I'm not going to say anything other than that because some of the things are pretty personal that I've heard. And there's plenty of interviews that you can listen to on this podcast that give examples of those. Okay, so I would like to share with you an article that explains how neurodiversity intersects with war and social justice. It is titled Neurodivergence, War, and Social Justice, and it is by Anna Faye Hermanson and Muhammad Faris. Quote, to be pro-neurodiversity is to be anti-war. Content warning for discussion of trauma, death, war, and ableism. Where is the place for survivors and victims of war in neurodiversity advocacy and neuro-inclusion? Is the neurodiversity movement actively anti-war? Those of us working towards neuro-inclusion need to ask ourselves this. Make space and then build a movement that is explicitly anti-war and ultimately build a world free from all kinds of oppression. Just over 1 year after Evid al-Haq, probably not saying that right, a 32-year-old autistic Palestinian was shot by the Israeli police at a checkpoint in Jerusalem. We reflect upon these questions and efforts to contribute to this conversation and extend our solidarity. Everyone we spoke to talked about the difficulties they face in daily life, from sleeping to getting enough nourishing food, to finding work, to getting a driver's license, maintaining friendships, and performing in the way they had expected themselves to before fleeing their home countries. The inability to cope in daily life was related to anxiety and not being able to be fully present in the moment, both common experiences of people with PTSD, while the words executive function were not used in testimonies. The ability to plan, prioritize, and initiate and follow through tasks in daily life, as well as emotional regulation, are deeply related to executive functioning and the inability to perform them to executive dysfunction. Close quote. So I can relate to the challenges that were named in the previous paragraph because I've experienced most of them. I've had difficulty with sleeping, acquiring my driver's license, maintaining friendships, and finding work. With the sleeping, I just did an episode on that last week. So if you want to listen to or learn more about that, you can go to that episode. It was on NLD, migraines, and sleep and dreams. And I've done a good amount of episodes on driving as well in the past. And I've done a lot on maintaining friendships and finding work also. So there's more material that you can listen to for that. The second article I would like to share with you is titled The Struggles of Being Neurodivergent in Social Justice Spaces by Karen Hahn. Quote, in my experience, many neurodivergent people who participate in social justice discussions and activities can tell similar tales. I have my own as well, most of them traumatic. Also, always prioritizing impact over intent puts neurodivergent individuals at a huge disadvantage because we are unable to predict the impact. We have to walk blindfolded through a minefield where a neurotypical person can at least see the spots of dead grass under which the mines are buried. Yet the mines are as unforgiving for us as they are to someone who at least could see them. When I pointed out the unfairness of this, I was told that we were unfortunately caught in the crossfire. We were the inevitable collateral damage, and we just need to accept that. Most neurodivergent people who work in social justice do so wholeheartedly and are happy to learn how to do it better. But our disabilities result in mistakes being made along the way, unintentional offense, lack of understanding, and the continual need for clarification. When you place expectations upon us, they have to be within the parameters of our actual abilities, not what would be the most convenient for you. Our disabilities require accommodation and understanding not only when it's easy, but when it's difficult. That's inclusion. If you're not willing to accommodate or at least tolerate someone's disability without getting angry in spite of the inconvenience to you, that's your business. But then you have no right to call yourself an intersectional, inclusive social justice activist because you are not. Close quote. Wow, that was powerful. This article reminds me of plenty of times I've had challenges with asking for the accommodations that I would like to have. And even when I do have them fulfilled from my family or friends, sometimes it's not enough. Because it's done the way I thought it would be, or consistently done the way I asked for it. If both of those things were different, maybe it would be easier for me to live my adult life. I appreciate how Karen and Anna brought up the different sides of social justice and neurodivergence they have experienced in their lives. I also found it helpful that they brought others' voices into their stories so they supported their opinions with more evidence. And to circle back to when I've asked for accommodations from family and friends, what I mean by that is sometimes, and usually this is my fault, not my family or my friends' fault, I don't word very well what I would like for them to do. And so the conversation goes haywire because of that. And how I respond to what they may say in response to my request doesn't always turn out well either. And so it's more on me usually than on them when it goes haywire. But sometimes it's not on me completely and it's on both of us. And like, for example, I recently wanted to have my mom ask me for feedback of, to ask me when I wanted feedback on some social and personal things. And I didn't do the best with wording how I asked her to do that. And I could have done better. And the reason why I'm giving this as an example is because it highlights where I could have done better with asking her, hey, I know you're really supportive and you really want to help me with NLD and the challenges that it presents to me, but sometimes I want to try to help myself with those challenges. And sometimes when you give feedback, I'm not expecting it, and other times I am. And all I wanted her to do was kind of ask me, do I want feedback, rather than just giving it. Because sometimes I might think that the situation went well with my friend or somebody I'm dating or a family member, and she thinks it didn't go well or could have gone better. And then it kind of makes me feel down inside because it's like, well, I had a good time with this person, whether it was with lunch or seeing a movie together. I didn't really expect you to make me think, oh, maybe I should have asked them that question, or maybe I should have responded differently in that situation or that conversation with them. Now you're making me feel like that interaction with that person wasn't positive like I thought it was. I hope that what I'm saying makes sense, and I'm not saying it to hurt my mom's feelings at all. I'm just trying to give an example of how I could have done better with asking her to try to alert me when she's going to give feedback, because sometimes I do expect it, like when we're going on our morning walks or when I ask her for feedback or help on something, then I do expect it. But when it comes out of the blue, it's like, uh, I don't know how to respond to it, and I don't really know why she's giving it. So, other than the fact that I know she wants to help me in any way that she can, and I do really appreciate her help, but sometimes I want to try to do more things on my own because because when I'm living on my own and I'm not living with my parents anymore, I don't want to have to call them every single time I need help, because I want to try to be able to do things on my own and not have to be calling them when they're at work or when they might be with socializing with some friends. Yes, I work with my parents, so I would know when they're at work. But what I'm trying to say is I want to try to be more independent with some of the things with NLD than I feel like I am now, um, because I can have help from my parents whenever I need it because I live with them. It's easier to have access to that help, but it's not always something that I want. So I hope that little story helped you out with finding something that relates to you in your own life with that. And I hope that you are able to use that example to maybe help a friend if you haven't had that happen to you personally. Yeah. So I hope that those articles were helpful for you and that the topic of social justice with neurodivergence and neurotypicals is a little bit easier for you to navigate now that you've heard from me on it. And as always, I will put the links for the articles in the podcast description so you can read more on them if you want to. And I will talk to you next Friday. I also wanted to let you know that I started a Patreon account for this podcast to try to get some more revenue from it. That's not the reason why I started this podcast, but I'm trying to get some revenue from the podcast because it will help me keep it going. Um, so if you are willing to donate even $1 or $2 or $5, whatever amount is comfortable for you, to Patreon for Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, that would be appreciated. You can also use Spotify to donate money, and you can also use BetterHelp to donate money with clicking on the link and becoming a customer of BetterHelp. So those are 3 different ways you can support the podcast, and I hope that you will choose which way works for you, and that you will choose which level works for you as well. And I hope that you do it because the podcast helps you also, and that you are willing to support me in continuing to produce it. Thank you. And today I am very excited to announce that BetterHelp is now sponsoring this podcast. I have had 7 years of therapy, so I know it can help change your life if you not only let it, but work on the personal goals that you set with your therapist. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's more affordable than in person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are the greatest asset. And special offering to listeners of Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/. I'll put in the link in the podcast description for you. That's BetterHelp, HELEP. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also, see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than it originally was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye.